I thought it was over when he walked away that morning. I told myself it was just a moment. A beautiful, fragile moment we both needed to heal. But exactly 7 days later, just when I started convincing myself to forget it, his message came. A voice note. Only 6 words. And those 6 words shattered the walls I had so carefully built. Speech balloon, I still feel you, every day. Now I'm left wondering, was it a passing storm between us? Or the start of something that never really ended? Sparkles a soft, emotionally charged continuation of a love too deep to define, where longing, memory, and heartache blend into one unforgettable choice. I never thought a single night could change how I saw everything, how I saw myself, how I saw my son, and how fragile the quiet moments in life really are. It was a Friday evening and the week had drained me. I had been juggling the usual chaos, calls from my boss, grocery lists, bills, and my own silent war with loneliness. Ever since Daniel, my ex-husband, left 3 years ago, I had learned how to make silence my friend. But some nights, it became too loud. I was standing in the kitchen with a towel slung over my shoulder, stirring Alfredo pasta on the stove. The warmth of the steam brushed my cheeks while the scent of garlic, cream, and parsley filled the room. My son, Caleb, had just returned home from college for spring break. He had grown taller, stronger, and different. Not the boy I once tucked in at night, but a young man with a quiet, intense gaze and the kind of presence that lingered even after he left a room. "Smells amazing, Mom," he said, sliding into one of the kitchen stools. I turned around and smiled. "You always say that. You just missed real food." He grinned, brushing his fingers through his tousled dark hair. Guilty. Dinner was simple. Caleb talked about his classes, his friends, and a professor he couldn't stand. I watched him speak, and every so often I'd catch myself staring too long, amazed at how much he'd changed. His voice was deeper, more deliberate. His eyes studied me differently, as though he was noticing things he never did before. But maybe I was just being silly. Maybe I was just tired. After we cleaned up, I flopped onto the couch with a glass of wine while Caleb picked out an old movie we used to watch together when he was younger. Somewhere in Time. Classic. Romance, mystery, time travel. It was our thing. He turned off the lights and sat down beside me, a bowl of popcorn between us. The film began, soft piano music echoing through the living room. Our arms brushed once. Then again. I didn't move away. Neither did he. Halfway through the movie, I realized I had tucked my feet under me, slightly leaning toward Caleb. His scent, a mix of sandalwood and that subtle male musk, was oddly comforting. Not inappropriate. Just grounding. I felt a warmth bloom in my chest, one that had been dormant for far too long. I told myself it was just maternal affection, nostalgia. Just a mother loving her grown son. But it felt like more than that. Though not that way. Just something unspoken. Raw. Then, somewhere between the crescendo of violins and Christopher Reeve whispering, "Come back to me," Caleb leaned in slightly. His voice barely above a breath. "Mom, do you ever feel like no one really sees you anymore?" I turned my head slowly, heart caught in my throat. The screen flickered light across his face, and for a moment, I saw a reflection of myself in him. Lost, vulnerable, aching for something unnamed. "All the time," I whispered back. His hand brushed my knuckles. It was gentle. Not forceful. Not wrong. Just a quiet reaching out. A moment suspended in air. "I see you," he said. My breath hitched. I smiled, confused by the intensity in his eyes. "You're sweet. But you don't need to say that." "I'm not saying it because I need to. I'm saying it because it's true." My heart was hammering. The air felt heavier. Not tense, but intimate. I shifted slightly, trying to shake it off. "You should get some sleep soon. Long drive today." He didn't move. His eyes stayed on me. "Can I tell you something? And you promise not to freak out." I hesitated, feeling the wine blur the edges of my anxiety. "Okay." He leaned in again. "Sometimes I think you forget how beautiful you are. Not just as a mom. As a woman." A silence so sharp it could cut filled the room. My fingers curled into the fabric of the couch. That wasn't something you expect your son to say. But there was no malice. No wrongness. It was pure honesty. Bold. Kind. Intimate. I looked away, blinking fast. "Caleb, you shouldn't say things like that. It's complicated." "I know," he said softly. I just wanted you to know. I see you. And not just because I'm your son, but because I care. The room buzzed with electricity. I stood up abruptly, clutching my empty glass. I should refill this. As I stepped into the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, trying to steady my breath. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I was simply unraveling. No man had looked at me that way in years. Not with desire. Not with reverence. Not with respect. I felt his presence behind me a second later. Close. But not too close. I didn't mean to upset you, he said. You didn't. I just wanted to say what I feel. You're more than a mom. You're amazing. And I hate seeing you act like you don't matter. I closed my eyes, the weight of his words pressing against my ribs. Go to bed, Caleb. It's been a long day. He kissed the top of my head gently. Good night, Mom. I didn't move. Not until I heard his door shut. That night I lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, hearing his words on repeat. I see you. You're beautiful. You matter. My hand traced the bare skin of my collarbone. I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't afraid. But I was aware, acutely aware, of how long it had been since I felt truly wanted, not just physically but wholly. Completely. Emotionally. Something had shifted between us that night. Not into something forbidden but into something new. Something fragile and undefined. We were both searching for love in the shadows of memory and silence. The next morning Caleb made pancakes. He didn't bring up the night before. Neither did I. But when he handed me my plate, our fingers touched. And that touch lingered, just a second longer than it used to. The next few days passed quietly but not without weight. I kept myself busy, gardening in the mornings, pretending to scroll through emails, folding laundry that didn't need folding. Caleb stayed around the house, helping with small things like fixing the leaky faucet or organizing the garage. We spoke casually like nothing had happened. But every word we exchanged carried a shadow underneath. Every glance had a softness, a question we didn't dare ask out loud. One rainy afternoon I found myself curled up on the porch swing, wrapped in a shawl. The soft patter of raindrops on the roof was soothing, almost meditative. My mug of tea had long gone cold in my hands, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Then I heard his voice. You always sit out here when it rains, Caleb said, stepping onto the porch barefoot, holding 2 steaming mugs. One of these is actually hot. I smiled, reaching for the cup. You remember that? He sat next to me, just close enough that our shoulders barely touched. I remember a lot of things. There was silence again. The kind that doesn't ask to be filled. I didn't mean to confuse you the other night, he said suddenly, his voice lower than usual. But I can't take it back. I kept my eyes on the misty front yard. You don't have to take it back. I'm not angry. I don't know how to explain it, Mom. It's not a normal feeling, I know. But I feel so close to you, like you're more than who you think you are. I finally turned to him. His eyes weren't afraid. They were wide open, full of honesty and something softer. Something that felt like admiration. Longing even. You see something in me that I forgot was there, I whispered. But that doesn't mean you should. I know. It just hurts to watch you disappear into yourself. His words wrapped around me like fog. Thick, disorienting but gentle. I set my cup down on the table and stood, wrapping the shawl tighter around my body. I need to go inside. He didn't stop me. But as I stepped through the door, I heard him softly say, I just want you to feel loved again. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I tossed and turned, my skin tingling with every word he'd said. There was no shame in what he was trying to offer. It wasn't physical, it was deeper. It was something I hadn't tasted in years. And it scared me more than anything. The next day I woke early and went straight into the kitchen to busy my hands. Chopping, stirring, baking. I needed normalcy. Caleb walked in, shirtless, with a towel slung over his shoulder from the shower. His torso had matured into that of a man, and for a flicker of a second I caught my breath. I quickly looked away. Smells like cinnamon, he said. Cinnamon rolls. Just like you like them, I said, keeping my eyes fixed on the tray. He came close, standing behind me. I could feel the heat of his skin. His presence. My heart raced. You don't have to keep pretending, he said softly. I can tell you feel it too. My hands paused, flowers still on my fingers. Caleb. I'm not trying to make things weird. I just want you to know that you're not alone in this house, or in your heart. I turned around slowly facing him. We stood close, too close, but neither of us moved. Why now? I asked. Why say these things now? Because I'm not a kid anymore. And because I see you trying to carry everything on your own. I want to be here for you not as your son, but as someone who really sees you. His words weren't inappropriate. They weren't crossing any lines. But the emotion behind them was undeniable. He wasn't talking about romance. He was talking about connection. Deep, unwavering connection. That night we watched another movie. I wore my usual long sweater and leggings, my hair loosely tied up. Caleb sat beside me, this time just a little closer, our thighs brushing. The movie played, but I wasn't watching. I could feel his breath, steady and warm. Then, just like before, his voice broke through the quiet. I used to look forward to coming home because of the food. But now it's just being near you. I turned to look at him. You don't know how hard it's been to be alone. Yes, I do, he said. Because I've felt alone even when surrounded by people. You make me feel like I'm home. There was a silence so loaded I thought it might break me. Then I did something I didn't expect. I reached over and touched his cheek gently. Just for a second. A mother's touch, but not quite. A woman's touch too. He closed his eyes, leaning into it. I don't know what's happening, I whispered. Neither do I, he said. But I don't want it to stop. I stood again, heart pounding, hands shaking. I need time. He nodded, eyes never leaving mine. Take all the time you need. That night I took a long bath, my body sinking into warm water scented with lavender. My mind raced with memories. Of being left, of crying into pillows, of long cold nights without anyone reaching for me. And now someone was reaching. Not with hands, but with his heart. The next morning I found a note on the kitchen table. Going out for a long walk. Didn't want to wake you. I'm not trying to push anything. Just wanted you to know. I'm still here. Caleb. I held the note to my chest and let a single tear roll down my cheek. He wasn't asking for something physical. He was giving me something emotional. Something I hadn't felt in years. Intimacy. The kind that makes you feel like you're not invisible. Like you matter. Like you're still a woman. When he returned later that evening, I greeted him with a soft smile. Hungry? I asked. For food or for you? He teased gently, then quickly added, sorry. That was too much. But I laughed. For the first time in days I really laughed. We had dinner. Talked about books. Joked about bad TV. There was still something humming between us. Something quiet but undeniable. And as we cleaned up, I felt his hand brush mine again. I'm going back to school in a week, he said. I know. Can we spend more time together before I leave? I nodded. We can do that. The days slipped by like pages fluttering in the wind. Too fast, too fragile to hold. Caleb and I fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. But we both knew it wasn't. There was something new breathing between us now. Something neither of us dared to name. Each morning I'd wake to the scent of coffee and find him in the kitchen shirtless, barefoot, humming some tune he probably picked up from his college playlist. And each morning I'd pretend I didn't notice how the sunlight caught the angles of his face or how his voice sank a little deeper when he said, "Good morning, Mom." Sometimes I forgot he was my son. Not in the way that would shame me. But in the way that reminded me he had become someone beyond the boy I raised. He had become a man who saw me not just as a mother, but as a woman. It was on the 5th evening, 3 days before he was set to return to college, that the skies changed everything. It started with thunder, low and slow, rolling over the horizon like a whisper of something to come. By nightfall the rain had turned to sheets and the power flickered once, twice, then vanished completely. I lit a few candles around the living room, their soft glow dancing across the walls like warm hands. Looks like it's just you, me, and a blackout, Caleb said, walking in with 2 mugs of cocoa. You always bring drinks, I smiled, taking one from him. Is that your way of softening me? Maybe, he grinned. Is it working? I didn't answer. Instead, I sat down on the couch, pulling the blanket across my lap. Caleb joined me, close as always. Only this time the silence between us wasn't filled with a movie. Just breath and candlelight. Outside, thunder cracked again, startling me. You still don't like storms? He asked. I shook my head. Not when they're loud. Come here, he said, shifting his arm so I could lean into him. Just until it passes. I hesitated. But my body moved before my mind could argue. I nestled into his side, my head resting just under his chin. His arm wrapped around my shoulder. The warmth of his body and the steady beat of his heart anchored me. We stayed like that for a long while. "You smell like lavender," he whispered. I took a bath. "I remember that smell from when I was a kid. Your hugs always smelled like that." His fingers absent-mindedly traced the edge of my sleeve. Not in a possessive way. Just a quiet, thoughtful way that made my skin tingle. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a long pause. "Go ahead." "If Dad hadn't left, do you think you'd still be happy?" The question hit me harder than the thunder. "I think I would have kept pretending I was," I said honestly. "But the truth is, I stopped feeling like a woman long before he left. I became someone who existed for others. Not for herself." Caleb nodded slowly. "That's what I see in you. Someone who forgot she deserves more." I pulled back just slightly, enough to look into his face. His eyes held something I hadn't seen in a long time: devotion. Not childish admiration. Not lust. Something deeper. And that was the moment I knew. The line between us had blurred completely. We weren't just mother and son anymore. We were two people trapped in a storm, both inside and out. "Caleb," I whispered. He didn't move. His hand gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek. "I'm not asking you to feel anything you don't. I just want you to know that if I weren't your son, I would fall in love with you." The words burned softly in the space between us. "I don't know how to process that," I admitted. "It's confusing." "I know," he said. "But I'm not confused. Not about how I feel." My hand trembled slightly as I set my cocoa down. "We shouldn't talk like this." "Maybe not. But I'd rather speak the truth than live pretending." The rain began to ease, but inside the storm had just begun. He stood up slowly. "I'm gonna go to bed." As he reached the hallway, I said softly, "Caleb." He turned. "I don't know what this is between us. But it's not nothing." He looked at me like I had just handed him the moon. Then nodded, disappearing down the hall. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. His words, his presence, that moment when our hearts aligned just slightly out of time. The next morning I found him already in the kitchen. "I'm leaving in 2 days," he said. "I know. I don't want to go with this between us. I want to leave you knowing that I made you feel alive again. Even for a moment." I walked over slowly, resting my hand on the counter between us. "You did," I said. "You reminded me of something I buried for years." He took a step closer. "I want to kiss your cheek," he said softly. "Not as a son, but as someone who cherishes you." I hesitated. Then I closed my eyes. He leaned in slowly and pressed the gentlest kiss to the corner of my cheek, lingering just long enough to make my breath catch. He didn't say anything after that. Just picked up his keys and said, "Want to go for a drive?" We drove to the lake. Just the two of us. Barefoot on the sand, laughing like old friends. There was something cleansing in the cool breeze, something pure in the way he held my hand when I tripped over a rock. And for a moment, I forgot all the labels. I forgot what was right or wrong. I only remembered what it felt like to be seen. That night he packed his bags. We had dinner together in silence. But not the heavy kind. The kind that feels like a blanket. As he stood by the door with his suitcase, I walked up to him. "Promise me one thing," I said. "Anything. Don't let this confuse your heart. What we shared was beautiful. But it can't become something that breaks us." He nodded, his throat tightening. "It won't. You gave me something no one else ever could." Then, with the same tenderness as that stormy night, he leaned forward and kissed my forehead. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." As he walked down the driveway, suitcase in hand, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because everything made sense, but because, for the first time in years, I felt like a woman again. And no matter what the world thought, nothing could ever take that away from me.